Today we are going to look at the asset disposal when it happens during or at the end of the finance. According to GAAP, depreciation would normally be written off only at the end of the financial year, when financial statements are being drawn up. However, if an asset is sold during or at the end of the year, we must ensure that the vehicle is shown at its correct value. That is the book value on the date of the sale. Now, how do we get the book value? However, if an asset is sold during or at the end of the year, we must ensure that the vehicle is shown at its correct value. That is the book value on the date of sale. Now, how do we get the book value? Cost minus accumulated depreciation. That means the accumulated depreciation must be updated up to the point of the date of sale. Therefore, depreciation would need to be calculated for the period of time that the business had the asset for the current. Now let's go through the steps of asset disposals again. There will now be an extra step. Step number 1 would be to update the depreciation of the asset for the current financial year, up to the date that we have disposed of this asset. Step number 2 will be to transfer the cost price of the asset to the asset disposal account. Step number 3 would be to transfer the accumulated depreciation to the asset disposal account. This is the opening balance plus the depreciation written off in step number 1. Number 4 would be to record the selling price in the asset disposal account. If the asset is sold for cash, the contra account will be bank. If it's sold on credit, the contra account will be debtors control, or creditors control if the asset was a trading. Step number 5 would now be to calculate whether we've made a profit or a loss on the disposal of this asset. Remember, it's the difference between the book value and the selling price. If the selling price is more than the book value, we have made a profit. If the selling price is less than the book value, we have made a loss. And then step number 6 is to calculate depreciation on the remaining assets at the end of the year. That is the assets that we had minus the asset that we have disposed of. So let's look at the entries that needs to take place. For step number 1, we update the depreciation of the asset for the current financial year. The entry in the books will be a normal depreciation entry, whereby we debit depreciation and owner's equity will decrease because depreciation is an expense. And we will credit accumulated depreciation, which is a negative asset, and therefore our asset decreases. Step number 2 is to transfer the cost price of the asset sold to the asset disposal account. That means we need to debit the asset disposal account, which is a nominal account, and therefore owner's equity decrease, and to credit the vehicle or the equipment account, the asset that we have sold. Those are asset accounts which normally has a debit balance, and therefore it means our asset will decrease since we credit it. Step number 3 is to transfer the accumulated depreciation to the asset disposal account. That is now the total depreciation. The accumulated depreciation at the beginning of the year plus step number 1, the depreciation that we have calculated. We will debit accumulated depreciation, which is a negative asset. If we debit it, it means our asset increased. And to credit the asset disposal account, which is a nominal account, and therefore owner's equity will increase. Step number 4 is to record the selling price by crediting the asset disposal account. Now, the account that we debit will depend on the way we have sold it. If it was sold for cash, we will debit bank. If it's an asset, will increase if the bank is favorable. If it's a liability, it will decrease if the bank is unfavorable. If it's sold on credit, we will debit debtors control, which is an asset, so my asset will increase. If it's traded in, it decreases the amount that I owe to the creditor, so we will debit creditors control and the liability will decrease. If it's taken by the owner, we will debit drawings, and drawings decreases owner's equity. Or if it's donated, it's given as a donation, we will debit donation Donation is an expense and therefore owner's equity will decrease. So those are some of the possible ways in which we can dispose of it, and the accounts that needs to be debited then, but we will always credit the asset disposal account, which is a nominal account, and therefore my owner's equity will increase. Step number 5 have two parts because it depends on whether we've made a profit or a loss. Now, if it's a profit, we will transfer the profit to the profit on disposal of asset account from the asset disposal account by debiting the asset disposal account, which is nominal and therefore owner's equity decrease, and credit profit on the disposal of asset account, which is also nominal, and therefore it means owner's equity remains constant. It decreases with asset disposal and it increases with a profit on disposal of asset. And when we've made a loss, we have to transfer the loss to the loss on disposal of asset account. By debiting the loss on disposal of asset, which is an expense, owner's equity will decrease. And by crediting asset disposal, which is a nominal account, and when it's credited, owner's equity increase, in which case owner's equity will as well stay constant.